Hey, what's up, guys? It's Nicola from Calcunic, and today we're going to talk about integers. Let's get right into it.
In this video, we're talking about how to add and subtract positive and negative numbers, or just integers. So let's just start with some easier examples and we'll move our way on to some harder ones. To start, what is 2 plus 3? Well, this is a pretty straightforward question. Most of you already know it's just 5, but let's try to solve this using a number line because it's going to be helpful in the future problems. So here we have our number line going from -5 to +5, and we're going to use it by marking down the first number, 2, and then what we want to do is add 3 to 2. When we add, we go to the positive direction, or to the right in this case, and we are going to the right by 3 units because we're doing +3. So we have 2 plus 1, plus 2, and finally +3, which will land us at +5, the final answer. Let's try another question. Let's say we're asked to find 2, and then we have -4. What is this equal to? So once again, let's bring out the number line. We have it right here. And we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to start off by marking out 2. And you might notice that in this case, we have a smaller number being subtracted by a bigger number. So our final answer is going to be a negative number in this case. We have -4, so we're going towards the negative direction, or in this case, to the left. And all we do is the exact same thing as before. We go to the left by 4 units. So we have 1, 2, then 3, and finally 4. And that lands us at -2 right here, which is indeed our final answer. Let's try a question starting off with a negative number. Let's say we're asked to solve -3, and then we have +4. Don't let the negative sign at the start fool you or confuse you. The process is the exact same as before. We take out the number line and we identify where we want to start. In this case, it's at -3 right here. We have +4, so we're going to move 4 units to the right, and all that's left is to actually execute that. We have 1, then 2, 3, and finally 4, and we landed at +1. So -3 plus 4, that's just +1. Let's try some slightly harder questions with a bit more negative signs and try to solve those. So let's say we're asked to find what is 1, and we're going to have minus -3. How do we actually solve this? So let's first try and bring out the number line and see if we could use the same process as before. So we're starting at 1, which is right here. And then we're subtracting -3. And so it's a little hard here to decide, do we go to the right or do we go to the left? We have a negative sign, we have 2, so do we go left or right? And the trick is, when we have 2 negative signs, as we do in this question, this is the same as saying 1 plus 3 in this case. Basically, the 2 negative signs become a positive. Now, there are a lot of ways to logically understand this. You could think of it linguistically. So when you tell someone don't not do something, which is pretty uncommon, but you can say it, don't not. Don't not is 2 negatives, and they actually make a positive. Don't not means do. You could also think of it in terms of money. We could consider -3 to be a debt of $3. And when we subtract a debt, that's actually a good thing, right? Because we don't want debt. When we subtract it, that's a good thing. We're getting rid of it. So that's a positive. And that's why 2 negatives make a positive. You could also think of it in terms of the number line. When we add a number, say 1 plus 3, we want to go to the right-hand side. Now, if we had 1 minus 3, we have a negative sign, which is the opposite of a positive sign. And so we want to go in the opposite direction as well. So we go in the left-hand direction. But now we have another negative sign. We have 2 of them. And that second negative sign makes us go in the opposite direction again, which takes us in the same direction as before, to the right. And so there are a lot more ways to understand and reason why 2 negatives make a positive, but it's just important to, understand one and remember that 2 negatives make a positive, and this rule also applies when you're dividing or multiplying. So let's continue on solving this problem. We have 1 plus 3. So all we do is move 3 units to the right. That's 1, that's 2, and finally we're at 3, and we ended up at +4. So 1 minus -3, that is just +4. Let's try one final example. Let's say we're asked to find -3 minus -5. So that's lots of negatives there. Let's see what we're supposed to do. So the first thing to recognize is the double negative here. And from the last question, we know that 2 negatives, that is just going to give us a positive. So this becomes -3 plus 5. And from then on, it's pretty straightforward. We could bring out the number line to help us solve this. We start off at -3, and we're moving to the right because it's plus 5. And all that's left is to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units to the right, and we end up at +2. So therefore, -3 minus -5 is equal to +2. Now, there is a trick to help us solve these problems without a number line, and it's based on the commutative property. Let's say we're asked to find what is 2 plus 5. Now, this is pretty straightforward. You could solve this just using your hands. The answer is +7. But we could also notice that if we do 5 plus 2, the answer is also +7. And this is because of the commutative property, which lets us alternate the order of the numbers to the left and right of the positive sign, and we still get the same answer. This rule also applies to multiplication. So in the case that we had 3 times 4, this is equal to 12. And we also notice that 4 times 3 is also equal to 12. And that is once again by the commutative property. So how could we apply this rule to help us solve positive and negative problems? So let's look at this question. Let's say we're asked to find -3 and then plus 5. Now, it might be tricky for some of you to start at -3 in your heads because we're just more comfortable using positive numbers in our day-to-day lives. But by the commutative property, we can notice that we have our 2 numbers to the left and right of the positive sign. We have -3 and plus 5. And so we could alternate their order. This becomes 5 plus, and then we have -3. Well, this is the same as saying 5 and then -3, because in both cases we have 1 minus, so we're going to go to the left in the number line. And 5 minus 3 is a lot easier and a lot more familiar for us than -3 plus 5. 5 minus 3, that is just 2. Now, some of you may be saying that's great and all, but I really don't struggle with solving -3 plus 5. And that's totally fair. But this rule can come in handy when we're experiencing larger numbers. Let's say we're asked to find -26, and then we have +37. How to solve this? Now, once we get into these bigger numbers, it can get kind of confusing when we have to carry over digits or when we have to go from negative to positive. And I personally find it a lot easier to swap the order of the 2 numbers in my mind using the commutative property. And so by the commutative property, this becomes 37 minus 26. And what we have here is, at least in my opinion, a easier expression to deal with than the one on the left-hand side. And so all that remains is to actually solve this. We have 37 and then minus 26. And so 7 minus 6, that's 1. 3 minus 2, that's 1. And we get our final answer. This is equal to +11.
Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. If you had any questions about the video or just other video suggestions, drop them down in the comments below. I do try to get to all of them. And if you made it this far, leave a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe if you loved it. That's all from me. Till next time.